Welcome to 'Cause We're Nerds, the podcast that covers trends and new releases in comics, movies, video games, board games, and much more. I'm your host Caleb, and today we're looking at tabletop RPGs. Why do games like D&D have such a stigma? Are they really that complicated? And how can you get started? Find out on this week's episode of 'Cause We're Nerds. Alright, so we're back, and Zach, welcome back.
Thank you, it's good to be back. I hear you're a little sick.
Yeah, I'm a little under the weather, so hopefully we can maybe keep this episode a bit shorter, so I'm not having to edit so long, sickly. I hope the audio comes through okay, but I'm going to do my best. But Zach, it's a good thing you're here, because this is our 40th episode.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of crazy to think we've done 40 of these, and then a little bit extra if you count the news episodes that I did for a little bit. That'd be 44, I think.
That's true. We started back in January, so that's what? October, November, December. We only have like 3.5 more months to go before our year anniversary.
That's right. Speaking of which, I've been trying to think of things that we can do for either our anniversary or our 50th episode. Our anniversary is actually going to land like over Christmas and New Year's, so I'm thinking we probably are going to do something for our 50th instead, because, I mean, recording for the Christmas time is going to be crazy as it is.
So true.
One thing I've thought about is doing like a QA, if we could have listeners send in questions. So, if we decide to do that, listeners, send us in your questions. It can be anything. It can be about our thoughts on things. It can be about us personally. It can be about our recording setup. If we get enough, which is a big if, maybe we can do an episode on that. If not, maybe we can figure out something else.
You can ask very specific personal details about Caleb's life.
Like my credit card number and my social security number.
The important stuff.
Right. Have you seen that show? I think it's called Human Magic on Netflix, their new magic show.
I have not. No, but I've seen it advertised.
Yeah, so dude's on there, and he just walks into this random guy. He's like, "What's your credit card number?" And he tells him.
What?
And he's like, well, "What's your PIN?" And he tells him, and then he tells him where he banks at.
Why?
I don't know.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible.
As soon as it was over, he's like, "All right, go change that immediately."
Yeah, you just said this is going to be on Netflix. You know how many people are going to try to attempt to steal your information.
Yeah, for real. Also, guys, as I said last week, we are open to episode suggestion, topic ideas. We've gotten a couple, and we're sifting through those. So if you have an idea of something you want to hear us talk about, again, please send it our way, causewenerds@gmail.com. You can also fill out the contact form on our website.
Except My Little Pony. We will never cover My Little Pony.
Sure we will.
Nope.
To say we won't talk about it. I don't know.
Not even that.
I could probably find a brony somewhere.
No.
But today we are discussing tabletop RPGs and D&D and kind of both of those together because they're, I mean, sort of the same thing. And partially the stigma that is attached to D&D specifically. Now, I don't know about you, Zach, but growing up, there were a couple different stigmas that were attached to D&D. First and foremost, probably because of how I was raised, that it was the devil's game, right? Like, I was never told that personally, but that was kind of the air around.
That's very true. I mean, to be honest, you did grow up in the Bible Belt South, right? So you'll have a lot of that. But I think the stigma was that it's dealing with demons, it's dealing with monsters, and so as a kid, you shouldn't be, playing games with monsters. Go ahead and play Monopoly, where you're learning about money, but not learning about how to summon Cthulhu from the depths of hell to vanquish your enemies.
Right, yeah, and I think there was an issue with, like, magic and everything. Like, I mean, it was the same stuff with Harry Potter, but the other big stigma that I know of is, like, it's, like, you've got nerds, right? Nerd has kind of been normalized now, where it's a normal cultural thing.
True, and you're right? Because nerds, like, geeks, us, right? We have become more socially acceptable in a way. It's become more mainstream to be a nerd. Now, I wouldn't say it's cool because I don't think it still is, culture wise, but it's definitely become more commonplace to run into people who might like the MCU, or who really enjoy Star Wars, or who play board games, or really dive into video games.
Right. And with that, one thing that I don't think has changed all that much is that D&D is still seen as like one of the most intense levels of nerds that you can be, right? So even groups of nerds are like, wait a minute, you play D&D?
Because it's that conception, right, of there's a meme out there. I can picture in my mind, right? The guy, he's super overweight. He has the neck beard. He has the ponytail that's really greasy. Basically,
Greasy
just
Joe.
think of South Park, right? So like that's the conception, and for some people, it's not far off. All right, we have to be honest in here too. D&D does draw a certain type of nerd. But I think the other kind of issue with D&D is that it's somewhat hard to explain, and it's somewhat hard to get into, because it's not a normal board game where you just sit down, learn the rules, and go at it. It's a story that you're trying to tell with other people. So you talk about it and roll some dice.
Yeah, and I think that because there aren't a ton of people just in the world about that play it, that at least you know about. I mean, there's a lot of people that play it, but a lot of them are closet D&D players. There's real misconceptions about what the game actually is, what you actually do, the level of commitment that you have to play. I mean, I know growing up it was like, oh man, to play D&D, you've got to do like, your whole life has to be centered around it. You've got to, really study, and you got to know all this stuff. And it's almost like a class at that point.
See, on one hand, I think it's easier to pick up than like World of Warcraft, because I think for a long time, at least in my mind, that's how I associated with it, right? Like D&D and World of Warcraft, they're kind of both the same. You have to invest 80 hours a week into both, meet, like twice a week, 3 times a week. You dive into your character, when in reality, that's not the case, right? Like this past year, I ran a Star Wars RPG by Fantasy Flight, Edge of the Empire, and we met usually every other week, but sometimes only once a month, and we were still able to carry on a story that ran us about a year, and that ended in what the gamers said, a spectacular fashion.
Yeah, and it's really not that hard to get into, I don't think. And I think the stigma is interesting because it is centered around D&D, and I think it sort of spreads to other tabletop RPGs, but not to like the same level. I think it's really centered on D&D.
Yeah, somewhat. So, I mean, you keep talking about stigma, Caleb. How would you define that? Are you talking about stigma in pop culture, stigma that you have seen yourself? Like, why don't you explain more in depth about what you're talking about?
So by stigma, I mean the things that we've talked about up front, that it's a game mostly for super nerds, or it's the devil's game, or it's these ideas that people have about it that are, I guess you kind of need the definition of stigma at that point. And I don't have that pulled up in front of me, but things that I guess are unfounded, almost like a stereotype, something that people hold against it that isn't really true. And I think that you have that with anything. And I think part of it is when you have something that was created like D&D, where it kind of started out small and kind of exploded in more of a underground fashion, there's always going to be that confusion and unknown element to it, which is what helps fuel those rumors and other things that people say that aren't necessarily true.
Well, and I would agree with some of that. I think why D&D is still more considered maybe other when you're talking about board games is kind of what I said up front. Is it's a little hard to explain. It's a little hard to just sit down and play. Like I have tried explaining to my wife several occasions kind of what it's about. And, a prime example of this is this last week, I was going to try a new role-playing game with my friend and a couple other people called Phoenix Dawn Command. A really interesting role-playing game where instead of dying is kind of the ultimatum for your character. In death, your character levels up. So you actually want to die as a character. You have a limited, amount of deaths, but you still want to die to go stronger. Anyways, it got canceled, and my wife was like, wait, so you still can't get together and play it? I'm like, no, the game master, like, he can't make it. And she couldn't just wrap her head around, like, she's like, well, why don't you just go play it? I'm like, no, he has to lead the game. She's like, well, why can't one of you lead the game? And so I think it's really hard to, like, explain that, role-playing games are, it's first off, it's not really a game, it's a story that you're telling with a bunch of other people. And two, you have to have a group of people who are willing to commit to meet together on a regular basis to tell this story together. And if you have those two combinations, then you can play it, but it's definitely far out from a King of Tokyo that you can grab, Joe down the street and show him how to roll a couple dice and play the game in 15 minutes.
And I think that segues really well into demystifying D&D and other tabletop RPGs about what they are. And you're right, they are kind of difficult to explain. The way I think about them and the way I try to explain them to people is, let's take D&D specifically. It's not a game like Monopoly, like you've said. What it really is, when you really boil it down, is a bunch of friends sitting around a table just talking. Like, that's it. There are some mechanics there that help you make decisions. That's what the dice are for. But really, it's me sitting on this side and saying, oh, I want to walk over there. Or maybe it's Blaine sitting beside me saying, oh, well, I look over at Caleb and I ask him if he has any flint. Or he just looks at me and he says, do you have any flint?
Exactly.
It's a lot more normal than I think people give it credit for.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to pick up in some sense, like you talked about, Caleb. But again, it's trying to be comfortable in a setting where you're able to role play.
Sure. And speaking of role playing, do you really have to do voices? Do you really have to get into the characters as much as maybe some people have in their mind?
Oh, not at all, right? Like, because if you imagine D&D, you probably imagine geeks sitting around a table, voice acting, and I mean, like my group, my Star Wars group, more often than not, I actually had to encourage them to, enter into the world more so, because they would kind of back out of it, be like, all right, who has the best stats for this mission? Or, okay, what would my character say? And I had to really encourage them. And we didn't do this all the time, but, try to encourage them, be like, all right, like, no, how would you react? What would you do as your character? And let's try to go with that.
Yeah, you're almost like an actor in a stage play, but you are your own audience. The script is the game master or the dungeon master in the case of D&D, and you are, like you were saying, stats, right? So typically, you could just look at someone and say, what are your stats? Or a better in-game way to do that would be to look at a character and say, have you ever, let's say you're trying to climb up a wall, right? Do you have any climbing experience? Has anybody here ever scaled a wall or climbed up a wall? And that's a small difference. And it might not seem like a big deal when you're playing a game like this, but it really helps you feel, not that the world is real necessarily, because obviously it's in your imagination, but it makes it feel more real.
And what I like about role-playing games is that I feel like it's accessible in one sense, Caleb, like what you talked about. And in the other sense, it's accessible because there are literally a million role-playing games out there that will fit whatever niche you want. If you're looking for a Star Wars role-playing game, they got that. The D&D obviously is the most commonplace one, in a fantasy setting, but there's sci-fi role-playing games, there's superhero role-playing games, there's, several Marvel, DC, and just like create your own random superhero ones. So if you wanted to play one like that in a superhero game, I've talked about that Phoenix Dawn Command. There's ones that try to, there's so many that they have to come up with role-playing games that flip the role-playing genre on its head. To try to attract more people to play their games. So they're a dime a dozen. And it's whatever you kind of want to play, you get to play. So, I mean, I that shouldn't be a barrier if you're trying to look for one, because there will be one that'll fit your play style and, most importantly, the world that you would like to imagine playing in, and then play in it.
Yeah, and you could also even make your own. Like, you could say, all right, guys, today I don't have anything. We don't have any books to tell us anything. We are going to do a Dragon Ball Z RPG.
Oh, whoa, Caleb. Way too nerdy. You just crossed the line. You just crossed the line of nerdom.
Fine.
It's not okay.
Fine. We are going to do a My Little Pony
No,
RPG.
I knew you would say that.
No, but for real, like, you could just pick something and
Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
Riding My Little Pony.
Oh, jousting. Jousting on My Little
Jousting
Pony.
My Little Pony. Jousting with My Little Ponies while riding My Little Ponies.
Oh, there you go. I had a random thought. This is completely off topic. I had a super random thought on my way home from work today. Batman, he's a dude. He's got to eat. What kind of cereal do you think he eats?
Oh,
do you think it'd be like a Wheat Thins?
No. What cereal does? Okay, what cereal does Bruce Wayne eat, or what cereal does Batman eat?
Well,
I mean, I know they're the same person, but
the
like,
same dude.
I feel like it's different. I feel like if you're Batman, you're eating like Cookie Crisps. I feel like Batman's like a Cookie Crisps or Captain Crunch guy.
No,
yeah, he's one of the yep.
No.
Bruce Wayne, on the other hand, is just porridge. He doesn't even eat cereal. It's just straight up.
No, so when Bruce Wayne's by himself, he does the same thing Batman would do. So in the morning, I'm imagining the only person around is him, maybe a lady who is escorted out of the manor, and Alfred. So he's pretty much Batman. But I was thinking like a Wheat Thin, because, he's always working out. He's always trying to stay fit. Like, that's filling. That's healthy.
You trying to say that Cookie Crisps are not filling or healthy?
I am saying one of those things.
Man, I need to talk to my dietitian. What is going on?
Anyway, so you could totally make up your own rules, and you could say, all right, we're playing Dragon Ball Z characters riding My Little Ponies, jousting with My Little Ponies. And we're going to use this dice, and it's going to help us make decisions. So like, if I'm Batman and I'm like, all right, I do a running jump onto that pony, the game master can say, all right, roll the die. If it's 10 or higher, you succeed. And if not, you fall off flat on your face. And it could be as simple as that. Die.
But probably not die. I mean, that would be pretty steep.
I mean, depends on if you jumped off a cliff.
Well, I guess that's true.
It's a flying pony. It's a Pegasus.
Nice.
But you can do that. But the issue with that is it doesn't necessarily provide enough structure for some people. And so basically what most of these tabletop RPG games are is a collection of not even rules necessarily. I would call them more suggestions on how to play.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah, because, I mean, especially with D&D, what are we up to? 5th edition now? I think.
5E?
Yeah, 5th edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, E stands for edition.
Yep.
It encourages you to kind of make up your own rules, to kind of bend the rules. So with all of these, it's like maybe in the rule book it says you can only do this one thing, but you can do it however you want. You can do it exactly how the book tells you, or you don't have to. And that's one of the great things about RPGs, tabletop RPGs, is because you might have a book, the rule book, that's like 100 pages long. And that's a really big rule book for someone to read. It's a lot to remember, but you don't have to follow all of it. So it's not that bad.
And it's really the game master who really needs to know all the rules. So, I mean, in reality, how a game should be played is that everybody should know the rules, but the game master really controls everything because he's telling the story, right? And so, really, you should be able to come in knowing nothing about playing a role-playing game, knowing nothing about how to build a character, and the game master should be able to explain and walk you through, this is how you build a character, and help you create that character, and then help you play the game with 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, how many ever people you want to play with. And that should be it, right? Because then you tell the game master what you want to do, as Caleb talked about. I want to try to scale this waterfall. Okay, well,
wait,
you have
scale
to do this,
a waterfall?
Scale a waterfall, because I'm Batman and I
Nice.
can walk on water.
Yeah. Were you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah, you can totally do that, and that's again another big strength is the D&D is really the D&D, the game master, the dungeon master, which I keep using those interchangeably. Technically, game master is a general term for any tabletop RPG, the person running that game. Dungeon master specifically applies to D&D, but it means the same thing. The game master is the one, I don't even remember what I was saying. He's the one that does everything. He's the one that runs the game?
Yeah.
Masters the game?
Yes. Masters the master of the game. It's kind of kinky.
No, we're not gonna even go down that road.
My Little Pony.
Oh my gosh.
precious.
Anyway,
we're
we're family friendly.
Question mark? I've been listening to your recent episodes, Caleb. There's nothing family friendly about them.
I don't think you've listened to any of them.
I've listened to all of them.
What was the last one on?
No idea. Haven't listened to it yet.
What was the one on the one before the last one on?
The last one had Chris on it, and it was about comics.
Okay, maybe you do listen.
Yes.
Good for you. Anyway, yeah, so you only need one person that is willing to commit to reading those rules and understanding them and having a basic grasp of it, which is very, very nice. It's not like a haunted house on the hill or something where everybody needs to know the rules, everybody needs to know how to play, because that can really slow the game down. As long as you have that one person, they drive the game along, they control the pacing. And we keep talking about this, but I think maybe, Zach, I have an idea.
Yes.
Should we just now do a very short mock tabletop RPG?
Sure, we can. So, yeah, no. So, I mean, when you think about, the role-playing system, really, if you want to play one, find a group that's already playing and see if you can join them. If you can't find a group and you don't know of a group, again, look out there. There's a billion role-playing games. Find one that you want, buy it, read the book, and then invite. You need, I would say, minimum, probably like 3 friends. It works really well if you can have anywhere from 3 to 5. That's probably like a key, key numbers. Grab 3 to 5 friends and play the game. Don't worry about if you don't know all the rules as the game master even. You can look them up if you need to, or make them up on the spot if you need to. It's really about telling the story. So it does take some time to prepare that story, but some rule books and some campaigns just already have them laid out, and you can simply follow them as well. So, all right, what's our setting, Caleb?
Okay, so I'm going to make you the game master because you have more experience with this.
True.
All right, so let's go back and forth to create our scenario.
Well, I have a scenario. You ready?
Okay.
All right.
Wait,
Mission report December 16th.
Water.
No. You won the game. So, how it would usually open is you would build a character, right? And then, the GM would explain the setting. So I'm going to go ahead and explain, the setting.
Let's figure out the setting together.
Oh no, I have a setting for you.
Oh, okay.
I came prepared.
Oh, did you really?
No, but it's prepared in my mind.
Okay, good.
The Emperor has just declared Order 66. Out of your small training room up in the Jedi Temple, you look out as you see clone troopers flood into the building, led by a hooded, robed figure. You crouch and hide behind a chair with the other young little Padawans. Pretty soon, the door opens up and a figure steps out. One of the young Padawans from behind the chair steps out. "Hello, Master Annie. What do we do?" The lightsaber's ignited and the Padawan's cut down before he can do anything. You are a lonely Padawan hiding in the corner. What do you do?
Do I have a lightsaber?
You have a small training lightsaber that is attached to your belt.
So I'm wearing pants.
No. You're wearing a Jedi robe that has a belt.
Okay. Pantsless. Interesting. Okay. Am I with like a group of others, or am I by myself?
You are huddled with a group of, I would say, around 5 to 6 others. On your left, you see a Rhodian, a human, and a couple other species. On your right, you see even more unique and different species as well. And in your front, you see that this hooded figure, aka Master Annie, has just cut down the human boy who asked him the question.
Okay, so I see him cut him down, and I suppress my gasp, and I look at the other trainee Padawans around me, and I like make a shh sound and like try to keep them from saying anything. I'm just gonna stay where I am and watch for a minute.
All right, so as you stay hidden, stealthed, you see that a couple of the Padawans do not adhere to your warning and try to run in every different direction of the room. And in lightning quick speed, are you peeking over the couch to see what's happening, or are you just trying to hear what's happening?
Yeah, I'm like peeking over the side.
Okay, as you peek over the side, you see in lightning quick speed that Anakin is simply slaughtering these younglings. Unfortunately, some of the younglings that had run were on your right side, and so Anakin turns and with a massive force pushes the chair that was standing there, and the two that are left huddling behind the chair directly right outside the window, which breaks with a crash, and the wind rushes in as you can, feel the wind on your face being so high up in the Jedi Temple. Anakin's kind of on your right, and he's progressively walking forwards your way, as you are solely still hiding behind that chair, with a group of younglings on your left.
Are they out in the open?
Most of them are also hiding. The ones that did try to run out in the open were cut down.
Okay. How close is he to that gap? If I run across, will I be spotted?
So the gap is kind of on your... You mean like the gap to the window?
To the other students.
Oh, to the other students. No, the gap's like 6 feet. You could probably quickly shuffle over.
Okay, so I quickly run over there. I look at all of them and I say, "You guys are idiots, and this is what you deserve." And I push the closest one out into the opening.
Oh no! The closest one starts peeing his pants as Anakin steps towards him and cuts him down, giving you a few seconds of time to react.
All right. You said I'm close to a window?
So where you are in this Jedi room temple is that it's set up in a classic circle, right? And so you were at the complete far end of the doorway that Anakin walked through. And the chair that was pushed outside, the glass window is kind of on your right, where Anakin just cut down the kid is basically a few feet in front of you. So you're all kind of pretty close together. But this room is, the flooring is solid. All around it are windows.
So there is a broken window already.
Correct.
How close am I to that?
You're also about 6 to 8 feet.
Okay, and how high up off the ground is this room? Like,
you don't know.
Wait a minute.
Well, I mean, I guess as you look outside, it's nighttime, and you can see that there are space cars passing you by. So you must be fairly high up, but you're uncertain how high.
All right. I take a second to think, and then immediately grab the next kid beside me and say, "Your turn." Push him out.
Oh no, this is getting dark.
And then turn around and make a sprint for the broken window and try to jump out.
All right, so as Anakin ends up cutting down the other youngling, a group of 2 other younglings, the Rhodian that was near you and another human, start sprinting after you and follow you to the window. As you get to the window, the chair-shaped, the chair has created a chair-shaped break into it with some jagged edges. And as you kind of peer down, you see from a dizzying height that one fall would be kind of the death of this small Padawan. However, you realize that about 10 feet below from where you are, there is a small ledge that you might be able to shimmy across to another window or room.
All right, how far is Master Annie from me now?
Master Annie is starting to walk to the 3 of you.
Okay. So I look down and I take my lightsaber and I kind of like smooth out the window, so trying to jump through it isn't going to cut me to pieces.
Okay, so you break the rest of the glass with your training lightsaber.
Right, and then you said 10 feet down?
Yep, it's 10 feet down from where you are.
Okay, so I very carefully go out the window. I'm still holding on, and then I let go and try to drop to that ledge.
All right, so at this point in our role-playing experience is when Caleb would be forced to make a roll. So I would say, check some type of attribute. And again, this very much depends on what system we are playing in. Regular D&D, he, would roll a D20, and the outcome would be decided based on that. And for example, the Star Wars one that I play with, you actually put together a set of dice that determines what you do, and you can have a success with some disadvantage, or you can fail with some advantage. So for the purpose of this, we'll assume that Caleb rolled a nat 20, which is amazing.
So a nat 20 just means that I rolled a 20 on the 20-sided die.
Yeah.
Without any of my modifiers.
That's right. So what happens to you, Caleb, is that you quickly attach the lightsaber to your belt, and you hang from the ledge and drop down, finding sure footing on the ledge below. And you as you're clinging kind of up high above the rest of the cityscape, you see that to your right there looks like there is an elevator that is also surrounded by glass.
Okay. Is it connected to the ledge I'm on?
It goes past the ledge you were on, so it currently is sitting where the glass window would come into contact with the ledge.
Okay. So I try to very carefully shimmy my way along this ledge to make my way over to the elevator.
So again, this would probably be another roll. You are successful and you are able to shimmy across your way to the elevator.
Well, what would have happened if I would have rolled something that was unsuccessful?
Yeah, so this is where, as a game master, you don't want to go, well, you fall to your death and you die, right? Like that just, it wouldn't go well. What I would have done is if you had failed dropping down, I would have done, one of two things, depending. I would have either said, one, you tried dropping down but got too scared and had to pull yourself back up. That is unlikely, as then Anakin would have slaughtered you. So what I probably would have done instead is that you were able to land on the ledge for a second, and then your foot slipped, you gasped, and you started to fall. However, and then I would, already have a contingency plan. So I would have planned this out where there would have been like another ledge that you would have fallen into, a trash heap, a car would have come by, where you would have still survived, but you could have suffered a lot of damage that would be a detriment to your character, that could cause you to die later in this game if it's not treated or if you make a couple more terrible rolls.
Cool. And we're saying successful rolls or rolls that do not succeed. And basically what that means is Zach would have planned out a number in the game. So he could have, it's an arbitrary number, right? So he could have said 10. If I roll a 10 or higher, that means I succeed. If I roll less than that, that means I fail. Typically, you pick that number based on how difficult you want it to be. So like if he picked 18, well, there's only 18, 19, and 20. So that's 3 out of 20. The odds for that are very low. Whereas if he picked 5, that's 15 numbers. That's pretty easy to get.
That's right. So again, for the purpose of the story, Caleb, you were able to make it to that glass elevator. What do you do?
So I take my lightsaber out and I either break the glass or cut it. I'm not sure which one I can do. And try to make my way into the elevator. So
the glass shatters, as the winds continue to whip around, and you are able to climb into the elevator, giving you some coverage from the wind and from, hiding you from what's going on inside the temple. As you look back from where you crossed, you see the Rhodian and the human get force push / lightninged out of the kind of area and falling into the cityscape. You being the only surviving youngling in that room.
I see that, and I am filled with terror. And even though I'm a Padawan, I am keen with the Force. It's just not quite tuned, and I realize, which sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. When you try to tell the DM what you realize, but
that's right.
For the sake of this, I realize there are probably people on the other side of this elevator door. I look out behind me to the cityscape and realize that it is all burning and that I have no hope. I take out my lightsaber and perform Jedi seppuku.
Oh, no!
The end.
As Caleb ignites his lightsaber, the door opens and in walks a Jedi Master looking at the youngling and saying, "Follow me, I will take you to safety," and stops his lightsaber from igniting.
I look at him and say, you really messed up my epic ending.
Because I'm railroading you, right? So in reality, I would have different things happening, right? So like, for example, if Caleb opened the door, maybe I would have a Jedi Master there that would have helped him out. Subsequently, if he had pressed one of the buttons, he would have gone down the elevator. At the end of the elevator, there could have been a way for him to sneak out, but there were 2 clone troopers there that he would have to engage in combat. So, I would set this up so there's combat encounters as well, because you don't want to just tell a story. You want to have combat, but it's a nice balance. You don't want to have too much combat. You want to be able to tell the story, but you also want to make sure there is combat in at least every game session. So it's not just people talking the whole time, but you're actually able to use the skills of a warrior that hopefully a couple people in your party have been given as well, right? So let's say, go kind of rewinding a little bit. Let's say Caleb presses the button, goes down, sees 2 clone troopers. He would engage in combat, and then something like to the effect of, you run off into Coruscant at night, knowing that your sisters and brethren of the Jedi Order have fallen, but that you survived.
And that would be a really good ending.
Yeah, because then it really opens it up to, well, what's next? And as a game master, I could do several things. I could say, what do I want to do? Let's do it. I could ask Caleb and say, hey, what would be really cool? And then Caleb might say, well, I've always wanted to go to Hoth. And then go to Dantooine because I really do like sand. It doesn't actually get everywhere. And it's not rough or coarse. It's actually really enjoyable to lay in. And so you might take a trip there. So, you can talk to the players and decide what you want to do, or you can kind of come up with it yourself.
Now, when I say that that's the end, what I meant was that's the end of a gaming session. So like it's Wednesday night, we've gotten together. That's how it ends for that night. And what Zach's talking about is he's talking with the people after the game session has ended, or maybe throughout the next week. He's not just going to ask them that in the middle of the game.
No, exactly, right? So after the game session, we laugh, we talk about it, and then, we talk about what we want to kind of do next. But what I love about role-playing games is every time, I'm driving home from a game session or I'm laying in bed thinking about the game session, I always think about, like what happened, because it's always fun to tell a story with people. So you laugh, and then when you get together, you can recall those memories, right? You laugh about how a situation happened. I still remember back in college, I was doing a Star Wars role-playing game with my friends, and they had to sneak into a corporation building and basically steal some documents. And there was a security guard. And, instead of trying to bribe the guard, instead of just sneaking around, they did like the most absurd plan, which was, like there was 3 characters. One of them just hid. He was being smart. The other 2, one of them like grabbed this huge like package or like a bag like Santa Claus would have, and the other hid inside of it. And he started dragging him across this floor, right? And then they get to the elevators and this guard stops him and he's like, "What's inside the package and who are you?" And he points the gun at him. And they're like, well, this guy's like, okay, why don't you just go ahead and check the package? He opens up the package, and the other character decides to arm a thermal detonator and sticks it down the guard's throat. So that was a very interesting choice. The guard obviously died, and the other 2 were severely wounded because that is a very dangerous grenade, if you know anything about Star Wars, detonated at a very close capacity.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's it's stuff like that. In the ending of the Star Wars campaign that I talked about, they decided to kind of cause an uprising by these miners to overrun this Imperial establishment.
Wait, like the Han Solo movie?
Yeah, it's basically like the Han Solo movie, but they were like creatures. And so you're right. And so it's like these different fun things that you can do. And I had planned for them that they could do that, or that they can still do it without the help of those creatures. And they just decided what they wanted to do, and I rolled with it. No pun intended.
Nice. And even if you have stuff prepared too, like, I mean, Zach just made all that stuff up that we just did. You can do that when you're playing too. I mean, sometimes it's nice if your players ask to do something that you didn't plan for at all. Sometimes it's nice just to go with it. Sometimes
it's not nice, because then it is like, I prepared all this time for you guys to go this way, and you're going the other way.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, but you can always circle back around and have them do the other thing too.
You really can. So, I mean, you just, as a game master, I'd say a tip is to be flexible, to think on your feet. And it's okay if they take a side road and you just say, hey, pause. I need 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes, and then let's resume the game.
Yep. The last thing I will mention are miniatures. D&D's seen a lot with miniatures. Do you have to have them? No, you don't have to have them. And no, you don't have to have a map. But those things help a lot, specifically in combat. Because when you're in combat, there are more rules in the rest of the game, like how close you have to be to attack someone. You can kind of see the battlefield and look more tactically at it. Now, you can just use pennies and quarters and other things you have laying around to do that. You don't actually have to have real miniatures, but having something to visualize that helps a lot.
Yeah, and it would help if you have any players who are maybe a little hesitant to jump into a role-playing game, because it's something solid to look at, to play with, to hold, to move. So it works out really well.
Yep. All right, Zach, do you have anything else you want to add?
I think the only thing I would add is do your research. If you're a game master, just do some research, even more so than you would think. Be flexible as a game master and have fun. And if you're a player, I would almost say the same things. It's just come, prepared just to have a good time, to laugh, and have a good time. And if I would suggest a game to start off with, Caleb, you played this, I would actually go ahead and suggest, if I love the Star Wars games that I've played. It's a Fantasy Flight is who makes them. There's 3 of them: Edge of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, and Force and Destiny. And they each have a great beginner's box, which allows you to open it. I think the rule book is like 30 pages. It comes with all pre-generated characters, all the dice, everything you need, and you can just play with it. And I think it's only like $25.
Oh, cool. I will say, if you are going to DM, there are a ton of great resources online. I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a guy online who worked on the video game Prey. He has a series of videos on how to be a DM specifically. They are fantastic. Some of them are a little bit long. You don't have to watch all of them. You don't have to watch all of them in one sitting. But he is the best I've seen at explaining how to DM. All right.
Yep. There's a lot of stuff out there. Yeah, so just do your research.
All right, Zach. Well, that was that, and this is this. It's time for What You Been Up To. So, Zach, it's been a while since we've seen you. What you been up to?
Well, this past Thursday, I went with a friend to see The Predator.
Oh, I have not seen it yet, but I have heard from people that have.
Yes. Do you want me to jump into spoiler territories or no? Keep it vague.
Yeah, let's keep it vague here.
All right, so keeping it vague, I would say that it's a good action movie. I've only seen 3 Predator movies. I've seen the first one, which is still the favorite. I don't think you could beat that. The second Predator one, I can't remember what it's called, maybe Predators, but it's the one where instead of the Predator coming to the planet, like, all these people suddenly appear on the Predator's planet.
So that's not the second one. That's actually the third one, but that's called Predators.
Yes, the second one I have seen. So I've only seen 3. Predators, which I thought was a fantastic movie. Actually, I want to watch it again. It was a great movie. So this probably lines up as my third favorite out of all of them, but I honestly had a great time. There's some really strong action scenes. The story is decent. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but what I really like too is there's a group of characters, and how these characters interact is really funny. Incredibly not safe for work, but extremely funny. The lines they're dropping, the humor, how they interact with each other, and the storyline and twist is very interesting. What I will say, and this is a little spoilery, is in the end there's like, it's not the end credit scene, but it's the end scene. They kind of drop a hint that this movie could be connected to another movie. And if you're a fan of the Predator series, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? But then it turns out that it's not, and it's kind of let down. So I'm still unsure. I want to do some research because I feel like they were trying to hint at that, but they didn't, but they really could have. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was a little disappointing because they could have like went in a totally different direction. I thought it would have been awesome and really set up for like a great sequel. They didn't, so it'll just be interesting to see how this franchise does moving forward. I will say that I did read an article that said domestically and globally it broke, I think, 50.7 million. And it is seen as way underperforming where it should have been. So this movie is not doing great. However, I would say it's a solid movie. I would go see it in a $5 theater or rent it on Redbox. Maybe not pay the full price, but it is a solid action movie that I don't feel bad about paying full price to go see.
So Ward, who was on our Does Canon Really Matter episode, saw it, and he's a big fan of the Predator franchise, and he said that it's not a good movie, but he really enjoyed it. So take that.
I mean, I thought it was a good movie. So yeah. It's a solid action movie, right?
Sure.
So it's like you can watch a dime a dozen of solid action movies on Netflix. It's the same. It's a solid action movie. It just has the Predator in it.
Awesome.
Caleb, what you been up to?
All right. So this past Sunday, which is yesterday from when we're recording this, I was on an episode of the CNC Power Hour, where we played a stupid format of Magic, where we had 4 players. We all shared one deck and one discard pile / graveyard. We had unlimited mana, but we could only play 1 card a turn.
Oh, wow.
It was insane. We played 4 games in the span of 3 hours. The first 3 went very quickly. The last one went on forever, and you can see it because we were all very exhausted by the time it ends. But it was a good time. Go check that out. That should be archived on their page. But the other thing I did was this past Saturday, I went to Japan Fest in Atlanta.
That's right. You can see a bunch of posts on our Instagram page. It looked pretty cool.
Yeah, so we actually went...
If you like Japanese butts.
Yeah, the sumo. I was like, should I post this? Should I not post
No,
this?
it was good. It was good.
Yeah. So I don't think that guy was Japanese, actually. But anyway, we went like 3 years ago, I think, and we hadn't been back since. The first year, it was fun, but we didn't really know how to do it. This year, going into it, we knew what to do, and so we went to a lot of shows this year. It was fantastic. We saw sumo, we saw shamisen playing, which is like a kind of like a Japanese guitar, like a classic one. If you think of traditional Japanese music, that's probably what you're thinking of. We saw swords, we saw all kinds of stuff. It is great. It's more like a Japan culture thing versus like an anime specific thing. They do have an anime section, but it's pretty small compared to the entire thing. But it was really cool. We had a lot of fun. If you are in the Atlanta area, I would highly suggest going to it next year. It's always over the weekend. It's always Saturday and Sunday. Saturday gets a lot more crowded than Sunday, but I think there's more stuff to do Saturday. So,
sounds like a grand old time.
Yeah, it was great. Go on over to our Instagram and check those pictures out.
You know who probably was at Japan Fest?
Mr. Taylor Poole.
Taylor Poole!
Taylor Poole did our opening and outro music. He is phenomenal. Please go check him out at taylorpoolemusic.com. That's TAYLORPOOLE music.com.
That's right. And like Caleb mentioned, you should go over to CNC Power Hour and check out what he did with them on Sunday.
And also go check out our website where you can find all of our episodes. I've been working on it a little bit. There's a couple new things. It's pretty good. Especially if you're trying to share the show with someone, it's probably the best way to do that. Thanks for listening to 'Cause We're Nerds. Stay up to date with all the nerdy news and podcast drops by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also leave us comments and feedback at cuzwerenerds@gmail.com. That's CUZWERENERDS@gmail.com. And as always, if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. With New York Comic Con right around the corner, it's time to prepare yourself. But how? What should you bring? Should you cosplay? And what about the panels? Next week, we'll give you the Comic Con Survival Kit. And we will see you next week on 'Cause We're Nerds. Stay nerdy.
All right, so now that you all are actually listening, the real reason we did this is that we keep trying to get our cousin, his brother, Jacob, to D&D a game, and he always falls flat. For example, he says, prepare your character. Everybody does, no response. Then he says, we'll get together soon. Everybody gets ready, no response. So Jacob Harden, if you are listening to this episode, this is a cry, a beg of mercy to please either start a campaign or pull the trigger and tell us it's never going to happen.
To be fair,
please.
To be fair, he's been trying to do it. You keep going out of town.
No, please. It has been stated. It has been done.
Goodbye.
Hello? Hello? I think I have just lost my partner in crime, Caleb. It says he is away. Hello? My little pony, my precious pony, you'll always be in my heart. My little pony, my precious pony, you'll always be in my heart.